When you record your swing, one of the areas you want to be able to successfully diagnose is the top of your swing. Where is this club pointing when it's at the top? Is it across the line? Is it laid off? Is it in line? If you've ever watched golf on TV, you've heard all of those kind of descriptions with golfers. There's a few caveats to that you want to understand to know if you're doing it correctly and then how you can improve those positions in your swing.
First, defining it, right?
Yeah.
So if I swing the club up to the top and it's parallel to the ground, let's say, not that you necessarily need to do that, but that gives us a good start, jumping off point.
Right, it's the geometry of it.
Right.
So parallel to the ground, this is going to make way more sense.
If it's on this side of your hands, behind you for a right hand, or left hand or two, behind your hands, that would be on the laid off side.
Right.
If it's swung over here over top of your head, that's more on the across the line side.
Right.
All things being equal, if it starts on the laid off side and you pull on it, that normally would be a steepening motion.
Correct.
If it's across and I start to pull on it, all things being equal, it will tend to swing underneath. That's just kind of basic golf swing 101 stuff.
Everyone pulls on it.
Yeah, you have
So
to.
let's, like, even if you're not trying to pull on it, everyone pulls on it if you're trying to hit it with any speed whatsoever.
Yeah, you know, it's a body arm contribution.
Right.
You're getting into the shot. It's just, if you thought about, if my line of where I'm pulling on it is kind of, a good player will be kind of down this way. If I do that, that mass of that club is going to react and tip over too much.
Is there a combination or a couple combinations that you want to avoid as best you can?
So the worst combination is, we call it flopping the club laid off.
Yep.
So to me, that's the worst one because it causes the most issues coming down. So if a golfer gets up to the top of the swing here, let's say the club looks pretty good, 3/4 of the way back, and it finishes over that way, and it's happening more and more because people are trying to shallow the club so much.
Right.
The golf swing doesn't take very long, so they start to pre-shallow it before the top of the swing. It flops laid off and kind of long, and then they pull on it, and there's that tumble out over the hands.
That's a great point. 3/4 of the golf swing happens in the backswing. So if I'm steep, I'm going to give myself a head start. So if I know I'm steep coming down, I'll just make sure I shallow it somewhere in the backswing. But again, that feeds the beast you're trying to starve. That feeds the steep.
100%.
Okay.
So the other way.
Yes.
Right? So the other way.
That's
would be,
1A
yeah,
of try to avoid.
And again, let's just say it goes back kind of normal because
Right.
there's so much going on that could go on, right? And it gets up here, and then it kind of swivels almost like you're waggling the club, because that's really what you're doing, right? You're waggling it up here. You might be an elbow pop because you're restricting your body or something. And that one there, when it gets across, will tend to swing under. Now, you mentioned something. The worst combination, long and laid off, or short and across the line.
And by long, you just mean past parallel.
Yeah.
Think John Daly-ish.
Yeah.
Right? You think of John Daly swing or Bubba's. It's going, and it really looks across the line, but it's just continuing on the geometry of that arc.
It's on the circle.
Yes.
The other thing is, even if it's, let's say it's short of parallel and it's on this side of your hands, you have to almost imagine in your mind, if it kept going a few clicks, it should look like it's going back the other way again from here. You don't want to feel like it just kind of runs that way, because a lot of times it'll flop laid off again.
Right, and I'll throw this into as well, because if you're filming your down the line swing from a proper angle, it's going to be hands height. The swing looks way longer when the camera's lower.
Right.
Right, so don't just judge how long your swing is, because it could look like this, and then if I square up to the camera face on, it's going to be short of parallel. So a lot of golfers will freak out like, oh, my swing's never been that long, or I don't like it that long. Well, you're just looking from a low camera in many cases. Just confirm that from a face on.
Yeah, and we've done a video on this called the swoosh.
Right.
Brian Manzella talks about it all the time. The sickle, if you look at a lot of really high-end swings, the club head reaches its deepest point, then it does its down track back towards the hands, almost like it's going toward the neck if it kept going, and that would be your John Daly. So
Right.
just a nice, basic, plain vanilla club motion, which is pretty good.
If the golfer watching this is short and across the line,
Yeah.
one we want to avoid, how do we fix that?
So to me, if you got the club short and across the line, you've been told you got the club inside too much.
Right.
We see this all the time. And the golfer, I had one this morning, he was trying to keep his trail arm above his lead arm all the way to the top. So he ended up having this restricted motion with his trail arm too high, and it got the club short and across. And as soon as he pulled on it, this whole wedge whipped under and open, and he had a real hard time controlling the club face.
So the fix for that is?
Yeah, the fix would be take it back and let the club head, it's going to run through my hands here. As soon as it gets above my hands, let it kind of track up the forearm a little bit so it's inside my hands. If I had a wall here, I've got to flip that club head into the wall at some point, and if I stopped right there, no problem.
The reason that's so important, right? Because you hear all the time that, I don't hit the ball in the backswing. Well, you have to be able to make a downswing from different places in your backswing. You can't just have a 60-yard wedge shot and make one of these recovery moves for a 60-yard wedge shot and hit it very effectively. So you want to be able to, from anywhere from about chest high to about shoulder high, be able to change directions and make an on-plane downswing.
That's a great point, and it gives you the best chance to kind of pull along the shaft with the weight of the club head being in line. If I'm short and across the line and I pull on the club towards the ground there, I can't get it to come with me. The club head's going to drop so much faster than my hands are dropping.
Right.
Those are the drop kicks and blocks.
I mean, I've watched Scott Hamilton. I've known Scott for 30 years, watched him teach for decades now. Playing golf isn't stock shot after stock shot. It's adding 5, taking off 12. It's always in between shots, right? And if you're not in a position somewhere mid backswing to 3/4 backswing to just change directions without a big compensation somewhere, those shots are going to suffer. And to learn that lesson from him and see it year after year after year, it really kind of changes the way we view the backswing. And what you said there about getting the club when it's below the hands to be in front of the hands, when it's above the hands to be behind the hands, really is the key to that.
It is, and the fix to an inside takeaway is not to drag the handle reverse here and keep it out, because at some point this club has to eventually flip, and when it does, for these golfers, it does to me one of the biggest death moves in golf. It flips from in front of you to late off, and then when you pull on it, it's game over from there.
We've seen a lot of golfers be short and across the line, and they fix it with long and laid off. They've just jumped out of one fire into another fire and give themselves a whole different series of problems to deal with. So for the golfer who is long and laid off, how do you like to fix that?
Yeah, you have to, just like you said there, you've got to let the club head, most of those golfers are, again, they're turning the steering wheel kind of towards the target, and then they have to flop the steering wheel the opposite way late. Go ahead and get the club on its track here early, kind of somewhere in line with the hands here. I've rotated my forearms. If I do that, the club head hits the wall when it's supposed to, comes off the wall. Once it reaches its lowest point here, it's going to go high and then track back down. If you can do that, it's going to finish with the weight more above your hands, and then when you pull on it, it shallows on its own.
Because you want it coming out of that spot right over the hands and not circling behind you, and certainly not steep.
Yeah, so it's going to get to its high point. The club head's going to get to its highest point, track back down again, and if it's tracking away from the wall, there's no way it can be flopping back that way.
And an easy way to do this kind of encompasses everything we've talked about so far, is let's have you set up down the line to the main camera here and go about halfway back. Okay, so club inside the hands when it's above the hands.
It's on this side of me.
Okay, instead of trying to fish for that position at top, you can just finish your turn.
Yep.
And it kind of circles back on the track. So if you get it on that arc here, you can just continue turning without trying to, like you said, waggle the club in a position at the top.
Yeah, so I'm finishing my turn. There's a little loading in the arms. But the cool part about that is if I do that and then bring it back down, that club is shallowing, right, on its own. You don't have to physically alter this motion and make it shallow, kind of artificially, we call it.
You do if you get out of position.
Yeah.
If you create the need for it somewhere else. If you're out of position here and you have to do this up there, what are you going to do for the shots that have a backswing this long?
Yeah.
Learn a new swing, try to,
So most of the time, those guys, I feel like, have to make the full motion and just kind of take a bunch off it.
Yeah, very tough to do.
Not the best way to do it.
So decide on which kind of side of the coin or which spectrum you fall on, and then work towards bringing yourself back to neutral. Because again, if you can get mid backswing in that neutral position where the club's generally pointing at the ball a little bit above it, a little bit inside of it, you're going to be very good with all your clubs in the bag, especially your off-speed and 3/4 shots.